The grand hall glittered with golden lights as music floated through the air, blending with the cheerful laughter of well-dressed guests. It was the most talked about wedding in the city, an extravagant affair hosted by one of the wealthiest families. Luxury cars lined the entrance, women in flowing gowns shimmered like stars, and men in tailored suits clinked glasses of expensive champagne. Everyone who was someone in the city had come to celebrate. Yet, amidst the dazzling crowd, a lone figure stood at the edge of the hall, his clothes torn, shoes scuffed, and a weathered cap pulled low over his eyes. People whispered and pointed as the beggar shuffled inside. "Who let him in?" murmured a young woman in a silk dress, covering her mouth as if the very sight of him might ruin her evening. "This is a private event. He doesn't belong here." A few laughed quietly, their mocking voices sharp as knives. The beggar ignored them and kept walking, his head slightly bowed, but his steps steady. As he passed the guests, the scent of expensive perfume and the glint of diamond jewelry surrounded him, a stark contrast to the faint smell of dust clinging to his clothes. A waiter moved forward to stop him, but before he could speak, an elderly man in the crowd raised his hand. "It's all right, let him be," he said with a faint smile. The waiter hesitated but stepped aside. The beggar finally reached a corner and stood silently, watching the couple on the stage as they exchanged rings and smiles under the chandelier. His dark eyes seemed to hold a storm, though his face showed no emotion. No one knew why he was there. Was he lost? Or did he simply want a glimpse of the glamorous life he could never have? "Look at him," sneered a man in a designer suit, nudging his friend. "Maybe he's here for the leftovers." The group around him laughed cruelly, their voices rising above the soft music. "Someone should throw him out before he embarrasses the whole event." A younger man in the group, perhaps fueled by wine and arrogance, stepped forward and shouted across the hall, "Hey, old man, this isn't a charity. Go back to the streets where you came from." His words echoed in the room, drawing more attention. The music faltered for a moment as guests turned to watch. The beggar slowly lifted his head. For the first time, his face was clearly visible under the dim lights. His features were sharp, his expression calm yet unreadable. He didn't flinch or respond to the insults. Instead, he looked at the younger man as if peering straight into his soul. That steady gaze made the man shift uncomfortably, though he quickly masked it with a mocking grin. "Can't talk? Or are you ashamed of yourself?" the younger man taunted, stepping closer. A hush fell over the room. Everyone expected the beggar to beg for mercy or perhaps finally leave in humiliation. But then, something unexpected happened. The beggar spoke. His voice was low but carried through the hall with surprising authority. "Be careful how you speak. You may not know who I am, but you will soon remember this day for the rest of your life." The crowd gasped. The younger man laughed nervously. "Oh really? And who are you supposed to be? A king in disguise?" he jeered, trying to regain control of the moment. The beggar took a step forward. The guests noticed for the first time how straight he stood, how confident his movements were, not at all like someone beaten down by life. "You want to know who I am?" he asked softly, a hint of steel in his tone. Before he could say more, a flustered wedding planner ran in from the side entrance, holding her phone tightly. She whispered urgently to the groom's father, her face pale. The older man's eyes widened in shock, and he glanced at the beggar. The room tensed as he suddenly strode toward the man everyone had mocked just moments ago. To everyone's astonishment, the wealthy host stopped in front of the beggar and gave a small bow of respect. "Sir, I didn't know you were coming." His voice trembled slightly. "If I had known, we would have prepared a proper welcome." A stunned silence fell. The laughter died. Whispers rippled across the hall like waves. "Sir, the host, one of the richest men in the city, was showing respect to a beggar?" The younger man's face drained of color. He stumbled back, unable to believe what he was seeing. Wait, this can't be true," he stammered. The beggar's eyes swept over the crowd, his calm expression never faltering. "You judged me by my clothes," he said quietly. "But in this city, I hold more power than any of you could imagine." Gasps echoed as realization dawned on a few of the guests. Some recognized him now. His face was familiar from newspapers and magazines. He wasn't a beggar. He was the man behind the largest business empire in the city, the elusive CEO known for his ruthless decisions and unmatched wealth. But why had he come here dressed like this? And what did he want? Before anyone could ask, the CEO turned his back on the crowd and began walking toward the exit. "Tonight is not about me," he said. But there will be a time when you'll understand why I came. The guests stared, frozen in shock and confusion. The laughter and mockery from earlier seemed like a distant memory. The younger man who had insulted him sank into a chair, his face pale and his hands shaking. As the CEO reached the door, he paused for a moment and glanced back, his eyes locking with the groom's father. "We'll talk soon," he said firmly. Then he disappeared into the night, leaving behind a room full of whispers, fear, and unanswered questions. What had just happened? Why would the most powerful man in the city come to a wedding dressed as a beggar? And what price would the arrogant guests pay for mocking him? Nobody knew it yet, but this night would mark the beginning of a storm that would change their lives forever. The wedding hall remained frozen in silence long after the man had left. It was as if a storm had swept through, leaving everyone stunned and unsure how to breathe. The younger man who had mocked him earlier gripped the edge of his chair tightly, his face still pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He couldn't shake the memory of that piercing gaze, the kind of look that made him feel small, powerless, exposed. What just happened?" whispered one of the guests, breaking the tension. "Why would Mr. Han, the city's most powerful CEO, come here dressed like that?" The groom's father, Mr. Liang, tried to keep his composure, but his hands trembled as he wiped his brow. He'd met powerful people before, but none like Han Jiwan. Stories about him were everywhere: how he built his empire from nothing, how his decisions could make or destroy entire businesses overnight. No one had ever dared cross him, and yet, they had mocked him tonight without even realizing who he was. In the corner, the wedding planner whispered frantically into her phone. Yes, he left, but I don't know why he came. Please, find out where he's going next." She bit her lip nervously, knowing that whatever Han Jiwan's reason was for appearing tonight, it wasn't something to take lightly. Meanwhile, outside the hall, the CEO's black car pulled up. Han Jiwan slid into the back seat, his sharp eyes reflecting the city lights. "Did you see their faces?" he asked calmly, though his voice carried an icy edge. His assistant, a young woman in a neat suit, nodded. "Yes, sir. Just as you expected. They didn't recognize you at all." "Good." He leaned back against the leather seat, his expression unreadable. "This family thinks they can do whatever they want because of their wealth. They've humiliated others too many times." The assistant hesitated before speaking again. "Sir, do you really intend to go through with this? To take over their entire business?" Han Jiwan's lips curved into a faint, cold smile. "It's not about the business. It's about a promise I made years ago. That man Liang Wei doesn't even remember me, but I remember everything he did." As the car drove off into the night, memories began flooding back to him, memories of a time when he wasn't the city's most powerful man, but just a struggling young man trying to survive. Years ago, he had approached Liang Wei, desperately seeking help for his sick mother. He had begged for a job, any job, to earn enough for her treatment. But instead of kindness, he was met with cruelty and mockery. "People like you are meant to stay in the gutter," Liang Wei had said coldly. "Don't waste my time." That rejection had cost his mother her life. Back at the wedding, Liang Wei excused himself from the hall and went into a private room, pacing nervously. His wife followed, whispering, "What's wrong? Why are you so shaken?" "You don't understand," Liang Wei said, his voice low and tense. "That man, Han Jiwan, he's the most dangerous man in this city. If he's here, it's not by chance. He wants something, and if we don't give it to him, he could destroy us overnight." His wife frowned. "But why would he target us? We've never crossed him." Liang Wei shook his head. "I don't know, but I intend to find out before it's too late." Across the city, Han Jiwan arrived at his towering glass office building. The city below sparkled like stars, but his eyes were fixed on the files laid out before him. Liang Corporation, every detail of their assets, their weaknesses, their scandals was there. His team had prepared for this moment for months. "Sir, shall we begin the acquisition process?" his assistant asked cautiously. "Not yet," he replied. "First, let them sweat. I want them to feel the same helplessness I felt years ago. Only then will I strike." Han Jiwan, meanwhile, walked through the bustling streets of the city, dressed in simple clothes. No guards, no luxury cars, just himself and his thoughts. He watched the vendors selling food by the roadside and the children laughing as they played. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of calm. As he passed by a small bakery, He paused and smiled faintly. His mother used to love fresh bread from places like this. He bought a loaf and sat on a bench nearby, breaking off a piece and watching the sun set over the city. Han Jiwon had won not by crushing his enemies, but by proving that true strength wasn't in revenge or power. It was in forgiveness, in choosing to rise above pain instead of being consumed by it. And somewhere in the distance, a young man watched Han quietly. He had seen everything unfold: the rise, the revenge, the mercy. A faint smile played on his lips. Maybe the world still has people worth believing in, he murmured before walking away. The city lights began to glow as night fell, and life moved on. For Han Ji-won, it wasn't the end but the beginning of a new chapter, one where power wasn't about wealth or fear, but about making a difference in the lives of others.